Hi.
Hey,
Happy Sunday.
happy Sunday. Happy last day of May.
Oh, it's the last day of May?
It is. It's May 31st
I
today.
feel like we skipped from February to June. I feel like last week it was in the 40s, and then this week it's been in the 90s.
It has been in the 90s. I've noticed.
It's been brutal.
It has been brutal.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah. Feeling nice and comfy and cozy.
Good. You're such a cute pregnant girl.
Just a little bit of housekeeping.
Yeah.
We are not going to be here next week, just so that you are
Well,
all
Angilyn
aware.
is not going to be here next
Yeah,
week.
you won't be here either.
Where am I going to be?
You'll be traveling home.
We're not going to be here next week.
Right. We're going camping next week.
That's right. We're going to be spending time with some family.
In the mountains, so we won't be here. Then as far as the podcast goes, this week, which is relevant to this class, this week we're releasing an interview with Jonathan Sherman, who is a licensed clinical social worker.
Interview.
And we talked to him about the importance of premarital counseling and early marital counseling. And when we first started talking about it, I was like, I wonder if this will be an interesting conversation. And it turned out to be super relevant. And
I think he's a guest that people will want to have back over and over again.
Right. And it just, since this is a marriage prep class, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that we'll be posting that this week. So definitely check it out. Listening to it again, I was laughing and taking tons of notes, and it was really good. And it was totally relevant if you've been married for 20, 30, 40 years. So that's coming up. Or none years. Or none years. I'm just saying it's about premarital counseling, but it's still relevant for people who are already married.
I'm with you.
And then, so today our class is on dreams within conflict. And what we're doing today is kind of wrapping up and tying with a little bow the 7 principles topics that we're going on. So this is our last topic with 7 principles. Obviously, the topics
we've been very loosely following.
Right. There are things we missed, things we didn't cover, things we'll probably talk about in other classes. But next week we're going to. Did I not bring the book? I didn't.
Go find it really quick.
Okay. No, it's okay.
Okay.
Next week, we're going to start talking about Terry Reel's book, The
Is it on our bed?
Rules of Marriage. It might be on our bed.
I'll go grab it. You keep talking.
Okay. So that's another book that Nate and I read before we got married that was phenomenal and amazing and had lots of good principles in it. So we've been talking about the 7 principles up to this point, and then next week we'll start talking about this book. So if you wanted to start reading it in the next 2 weeks.
It's my favorite marriage book.
To get a head start. This is a phenomenal book. It's called The New Rules of Marriage
by Terry Real.
What you need to make what you need to know to make love work. Phenomenal book. So we'll start talking about this in 2 weeks.
I just had a weird burp. Okay, let's get into dreams. Are you guys ready? If you're watching live, say hi. We love knowing that you're here. Dreams with we're just going to start. I just want to start by talking to you about kind of an important moment in my journey. So most of you who know me know a little bit about my story. Back when I was single and in my mid-20s, I quit my job and spent a lot of time traveling all over the country, interviewing couples who were in love with each other. And my goal was to figure out what it was that the most happy and fulfilled couples were doing that I was not doing, or that I could learn to do in order to have the type of marriage that I wanted to have. And I interviewed couples from every walk of life that I can think of in all different stages of marriage. And you can find those on my podcast. It's called Growth Marriage. They're a lot of the really old episodes. And it was cool. Like, I got to interview a polygamous family, and I got to interview couples from arranged marriages, and I got to interview couples who were rich and couples who were poor and couples who were religious and non-religious, and all of them had something amazing to teach me. And then we started this journey in Salt Lake, and then went down to the West Coast and went up a highway, the Pacific Coast Highway, and went through like San Diego and Los Angeles and San Francisco, all the way up to like like Oregon and Washington, and then came back down and went across the Midwest. And when we were traveling across the Midwest, we got to this place called Omaha, Nebraska. And
if you've heard of it.
And it is a cool little town. And we got introduced to this couple, and their names were Ty and Terry. And I had no idea that Ty and Terry were going to change my life. Ty and Terry are a phenomenal couple, and they taught me a lot of lessons, but one of them is the lesson that I want to talk to you guys about today. And we sat down and started interviewing them and hearing their story about how they met and how they fell in love and how they started their family and how they confronted some of their insecurities and learned to deal with conflict. And just this amazing, amazing couple. Ty was a youth pastor at his church, and they were both very involved in their religion and very just like animated, fun, amazing people. And as we were going through their story, I learned that there came a point in their marriage where Ty felt like he had this, it felt like a prompting, like a calling from God. He really felt drawn to the youth of North Omaha. Now, if you don't know North Omaha is like the rough part of Omaha. It's got a little bit more gangs and drugs and violence. A lot of minorities live there. It's kind of like a little bit like the hood, you know. It's not the safest place to be. And he saw these teenagers and these kids, and they would go to school and they get off of school and they didn't have anywhere to go because their parents were working, or a lot of kids had parents that were in prison, and they just, they didn't have mentors to help them out. They didn't have a safe place to hang out. And so a lot of them were getting caught up in drugs and gangs and really negative things. And Ty was like, I want to open a place for the kids in Northern Omaha, for the youth up there, where they can have safety, where they can like play games together, where they can do their homework and get mentorship, and they can just not have to be on the streets all day. And he kind of brought this up to Terry, his wife, a couple of times, and it gave her a lot of anxiety. Like she got nervous about it, and she's like, I don't know if this is what I want to spend like our life on. And I don't know. I'm sure she had a lot of worries, maybe about money, maybe about time, maybe about being a distraction from their own family. But she knew that Ty wouldn't pursue this dream if she didn't give him the thumbs up. And I think she realized at some point that she literally held the dreams of her husband in her hands. And she's like, you know what? I'd rather try this out and see how it goes, and give and support Ty in this dream and make it my own dream as well, than not do it and see my husband like not have this potential or not realize this dream that he has. So they ended up, getting funding, and they found other donors in the area, and they bought this big building and they renovated it, and they created what's called the Hope Center for Kids. And that place has been literally a beacon for hope of the people of North Omaha for over a decade now. And, kids just had like I think a lot of kids have gone through it and then come back to volunteer to help other kids. And it's just become this really stable, beautiful place in the middle of this community that gives other children and youth meaning and purpose. And having this conversation with Ty and Terry and hearing this story, it made me realize that when you get really good at like navigating conflict, and it doesn't take up a whole lot of your emotional time, your emotional energy or your time, and when you get really good at building a strong friendship, and you have like a really great connection, and you have those pillars that we talked about in lesson 3, those 3 pillars of I know you, I like you, and I have your back. They're like really solid and really strong and enforced. You have this amazing foundation for your relationship. You're really good at navigating conflict. Man, what other people spend their time and energy on, which is managing and dealing with all of the fallout when that stuff isn't in place, you don't have to deal with that anymore. And all of a sudden you have the opportunity to pursue dreams and callings and goals and legacies that go far beyond just you and your partner. It's amazing. Like you literally have the ability to impact hundreds or even thousands and thousands of people by finding a dream that is meaningful to you and throwing your weight behind it. And I look at the Hope Center for Kids, and that was the legacy of Ty and Terry. And they're an example to me of what's possible. And since I heard their story, I started to look for other couples who kind of had reached this new pinnacle of marriage, which was having a higher purpose or having a shared dream together. And I've started to find a handful of them. They're these people who they just don't spend their days mired in conflict, and they have a really strong friendship, and things seem to be going well because they've developed these skills, they've mastered them, they've confronted their weaknesses, and now they're like impacting the world in really amazing ways.
Well, and the thing that I want to add to that is it doesn't mean that they're without conflict.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they don't have their issues. It just means that they have utilized the tools that they've put in their tool belt to make it so that their marriage works in this synergy. That's what Stephen Covey calls it, where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but 1 + 1 equals infinite possibilities when two people get together and synergize. And so I don't want to say that you have to wait until you've been married 20, 30 years to develop these skills and then get to the point where you can pursue dreams together. You can do it at any point in your relationship. Definitely. And that's really neat.
I just left a link to there's like a page on the Growth Marriage website where I have some of my favorite episodes listed, and I listed both of Ty and Terry's episodes there. If you want to go check them out, they're really awesome.
Yeah. And another example of that, I remember we interviewed Georgia and Mark Anderson, and their relationship revolving around the dreams that they've cultivated with each other. And I'll get into this, but the thing that I love about Georgia and Mark Anderson is that they kind of have championed each other's dreams. So it's not necessarily that each of their dreams are one goal and one purpose together. It's that one person had this dream, one person had this dream, and then they have championed each other. So Mark is a physical therapist and Georgia is a massage therapist, and they both were divorced and then remarried each other and blended their families. And the second time around, they were just really excited to dive deep into marriage, and Georgia became certified as a Gottman leader, and she started teaching the 7 Principles courses. And Mark he's more introverted. He doesn't really necessarily like crowds.
Super cool dude though.
So incredible. We love Mark. And but the idea of being interviewed for a podcast was a little bit uncomfortable for him at first. And she does a lot of things with couples. They do a lot of couples retreats that Mark will go with her on, and they do them together, but it's mainly Georgia's dream. Georgia's dream was helping other people. She has her handle is the Know How Mom. And so she targets mostly women, but she helps them cultivate their marriages. She helps them cultivate their parenting skills and just to help them be empowered in their relationships. And Mark has really championed her and helped with resources to allow her to do this, and with time. And
she's impacted thousands and thousands and thousands of lives.
And it's just cool to see how excited he is for her and how excited he is to do everything in his power to help her with her dream. And then when it comes to Mark, as a physical therapist, he was approached by LDS Charities and given the opportunity to go back to the Middle East and help thousands of people who were crippled or who had disabilities to get wheelchairs. And that's something that now...
So they've been to like Iraq, and they've been to Jordan and a couple of other countries in the Middle East, and they show up to these refugee camps where people are like living in tents and shacks. And, they show up and they give people the gift of mobility, and they give people the gift of like, I don't know, like movement, getting their life back, and it's this really powerful, amazing thing. And they're working with the governments, local governments, and it's a really cool thing.
And Georgia mentioned, this is Mark's thing. Like this is something that's mainly his dream and mainly his thing. But as they've been doing this together, it's kind of become both of their dreams. And she's helped support him in cultivating this dream, and just with their example of kind of give and take of sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit to help your partner with their dream, and they sacrifice a little bit to help you with your dream, but together you can make it these mutual dreams, and you can impact far more than you thought possible.
Yeah.
Just on your own.
It's a powerful feeling to have somebody who's in your corner who just like really wants you to have the thing that you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Now, one of the things that we're very aware of is that sometimes when you have a dream and your partner has a dream, those dreams also come in conflict with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could just share like our experience with that.
Sure.
And that might be a good example. So a couple of years ago, well, I've always kind of had this entrepreneurial dream, especially in the marriage space, which is part of the reason that we do these lives, is part of the reason we do our podcast. It's a very big passion of mine. And before I got married, I was running a subscription box business called Unbox Love. And we would send a date in a box to couples all over the country every month. And it was an exhausting business. It was really hard, and it was taking a lot out of me. And I ended up selling it right before we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Angilyn, like, look, I've been grinding for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. I'm exhausted. I'm burned out. I'm tired. I think
time for some stability.
It's time for some stability. I really want to be a good provider. I want to be a good husband. I'm going to go find a 9-to-5 job, and I'm just going to like earn a steady salary, put money in a 401k, and like be a solid, consistent provider.
Which was my mindset. I grew up very much in the stability mindset of, okay, I'm going to have a job that gives me insurance, that gives me a retirement plan that I go to, I make money, and the taxes are easy because my work does it all for me. And so when Nate had this desire to go back to the corporate world, and after everything that he'd been doing, I was like, great, let's do it.
So I
like security.
I went back for like 1.5 years, and at like probably 1.5 years into our marriage, 18 months into our marriage, Angilyn and I went for a walk, and she just kind of looked at me and goes, you're not I can tell the light is just kind of going out of you, the fire. You know, part of the reason I fell in love with you is that you were so passionate about helping people with their marriage. And I know that like working a 9-to-5 job is kind of sucking your soul away, and not doing this marriage stuff is kind of sucking your soul away. So I want you to quit your job. And I was like, what? Like Miss Stability wants me to quit my job? And she goes, yeah, I want you to quit your job. I want you to see if you can figure this out. I know like we don't have any kids. We don't have a mortgage. We don't have any debt. Like we're in like a really great place to take a risk right now. And if you want to go for it, like I'll keep working full time, and we'll just swing for the fences and we'll go for it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. What a gift. And so I did. I quit my job and I went back to the grind and trying to figure out this entrepreneurial stuff. How can I make a living helping people have ridiculously awesome marriages? And, you know, it's been a couple of years that I've been figuring it out, and things are starting to go really, really well. And Angilyn has been a supporter and a cheerleader, my biggest cheerleader. But there came a time about, I don't know, probably a year after I started this.
It was sooner than that.
Where Ange starts going, I'm ready to be a mom.
Yeah.
Like, I want to have a baby. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's something that I thought of my whole life. I always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to have kids. And we got married. I think I was more of an average age of when we got married, but Nate was a little bit older. I was 25. He was 32 when we got married. And the way that I grew up, I still have both sets of my grandparents. My parents are young. I grew up with my great-grandparents, and I just had all these really awesome relationships with grandparents and with cousins, and wanted really badly to have children young enough that they could also enjoy their grandparents, and they could also enjoy their great-grandparents, and that our kids would be able to enjoy us. And I kind of felt the sense of urgency in that, okay, I want us to start having kids soon so that we don't miss out on the opportunity to be healthy parents or to be healthy grandparents. And so my dream of being a mother and having this perspective that I had growing up of this specific way of doing it, that came into conflict directly with Nate pursuing his entrepreneurial dream.
Right, because I didn't want to have a baby until I was really locked in and solid about like being a good provider. Like, I really wanted to be able, if Ange didn't want to work anymore, to be able to provide for the family off of whatever I was making. And so there's this conflict of like, hey, the business isn't there yet. You want to have a baby. Like, what's the compromise that we make? Like, do we just take the risk and go for it, or do we wait? And we ended up moving back the date that we had decided to have a baby several times.
Yeah, that was really hard for me because we would say, okay, we're going to have a baby. We'll give you 6 months to get this on the road. We're going to start trying to have a baby in August.
And 6 months would come by, and some of the plans that I had in place, like, wouldn't go through the way that I thought they would. And there wouldn't be as much money in the bank as I thought there would be. And then I'd be like, can I have a couple more months? And she'd be like, And
it got to a point where it was, I wanted to support Nate in his dream, but I was having a really hard time because I had my own dream that was, not getting met in that process as well. And so that's what the whole concept of dreams within conflict or conflict within dreams comes in, is that we both had these dreams that were directly conflicting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a point where we kind of sought outside help because it was something that was recurring over and over again. It was this constant argument that kept coming up. And
so we went and talked to our therapist. We got some help. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that she really helped us to do is to see what was beneath each one of our dreams. Or
the conflict that we were having.
Yeah. Like the conflict wasn't coming from, like, I wanted to be a dad. I want to be a dad still. Like, we've got a baby brewing, which is really exciting. And Angilyn wants to support me in my job to rid the world of mediocre love. And like, we both support each other in our dreams, but underneath those dreams was something that was causing conflict between us. There was something that was like pushing a button and meaning that like Angilyn couldn't have her dream when she wanted to have it. And I wasn't where I wanted to have my dream when I wanted to have it. And it was causing some tension. And so, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I think everybody at some point is going to have dreams within conflict. We got a message from a couple recently where she really wants to pay down debt. She's been raised in a family where like debt is just not a great thing. And her husband wants to make investments that cost a lot more than what's comfortable for her. He wants to make investments that carry a little bit of risk in them in order to get a big payoff down the road.
Again, it's that entrepreneurial mindset.
And she'd rather be a little bit more conservative and like pay off debts before we take on more risk, and like totally understandable. Like, you've got these two separate goals. Both of them are geared around wanting security and prosperity for your family. But like, one approach is to be more entrepreneurial and maybe take on some risks and make some investments that could have really big payoffs down the road if they play out right and you've done your numbers right and you've really studied it. But taking on that risk also causes some anxiety and some nerves, and especially might hit on a hot button of like, never go into debt and play it safe and pay off your debts before you take on these risks.
And these kinds of conflicts in the 7 Principles program are called gridlock because they seem to be in direct conflict with each other. They seem to be on opposite ends of the spectrum, where it just seems like it's going to be really hard to find a middle ground where somebody doesn't feel like they are giving up their dream.
I remember another one, and maybe you guys can relate to these. Another one that I saw was an older couple. They had grown children who were having grandkids, and she really wanted to buy a boat. She's like, we've got this kind of chunk of money. I'd really love to spend it on a boat, and we can go like boating during the summers, and we can hang out with our kids and our grandkids and make all these amazing memories together. And he was like, well, I don't want to spend that money on a boat. I'd rather like keep saving it so that I can retire in the next 2 or 3 years. Because if we spend that money, then I need to work another 5, maybe 6 years before I can retire. And at that point, like, I don't know how my health is going to be. I don't know where I'm going to be like mentally and emotionally, like, and she's like, well, I don't want to miss out on this time that we have to make memories with our grandkids. And he's like, right. But I don't want to be a slave to my job until I'm like 70. That doesn't sound fun. And so there's this whole like both people have a dream, and the dream is to retire happily and make memories with their family, but there's two different paths to that dream. And those paths don't necessarily align. They kind of come into conflict. And so we want to give you some tools that, or at least one set of tools that you can use to address the story beneath the dream that causes conflict.
This is one thing where there isn't really a specific way that's going to work for every couple.
Yep.
So this exercise that, is it the Gottman method?
Yeah, it's a Gottman exercise. I'll just link to it in the comments.
This exercise is one that can help you, each individual couple, talk through it and come to their own conclusions on how to move forward.
So I just dropped a link to a PDF in the comments, and it's called the Dreams Within Conflict exercise. And this is just like a really good format to help you kind of get to the root of, this is basically what a therapist would do with you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you need to go talk to a therapist if you're experiencing dreams in conflict. They can help you go through this together. But this is a good place to start.
Before we get to that,
yeah,
I just want to point something out. We're talking about how when you're pursuing your dreams, sometimes they can come in conflict with each other. And on the opposite side of that, sometimes you are having conflicts over and over again that help you figure out what the underlying dream is. So you can use it both ways. The gridlock conflicts that you come into contact with can actually help you discover what your dreams are. Because sometime as adults, we just stopped dreaming. We just stopped dreaming. About this.
Yeah.
One of our friends, Laura Heck, who is a Gottman therapist, she told us a story once of her little boy, and it was his 3rd birthday, and they were having a pool party. And
I totally forgot about this.
They were about to sing Happy Birthday, and they didn't have the cake to bring out with candles to sing Happy Birthday with. They were just going to sing Happy Birthday at the pool. And her husband came up to her and said, and I might be getting the story a little bit wrong, but her husband came up to her and said, "Where are the candles? We need to let him have a wish." And she was like, "It's not that big of a deal. It's just a
He's
candle.
Like 4, come on.
It's not going to be a big deal if we don't do candles." And he was like, we need to give our son the opportunity to make a wish. This is a really, really big deal, because how often do they get to have this kind of a formal wish-making ceremony, essentially? And so she went in the house and she grabbed a candle and she just had it in her fingers, and she lit the candle and she held it out to her son, and they sang Happy Birthday to him, and they made a really big deal about letting him make a wish and blow out the candle. And she talked to us about how as adults, we kind of take on that mindset of, oh, well, it's just a wish. It's just a dream. It's not that big of a deal. Sometimes when I blow out my candles, I don't even think about a wish as a confession there, but we need to let ourselves dream. But we stop as an adult because sometimes along the way, our experiences and the things that we go through teach us that our dreams are just too far out of reach, or they're too outrageous, or they're never going to happen.
Be practical, be reasonable.
And so a lot of times we'll ask people, well, what are your dreams? Or we'll go through this exercise and people are like, well, I don't even know what my dreams are. And so this is another really great exercise that can help you figure out what your dreams are. We were doing this and we were talking, and one day I realized it's been my dream my entire life to take swimming lessons. I never took swimming lessons as a kid. I taught myself how to swim, and my swimming techniques are very mediocre. And I don't think I could save my life if I was thrown from a boat or something. And so I realized that I had this dream of taking adult swimming lessons. And I had always just pushed that thought away because, one, it costs money. And who wants to spend money on something as silly as adult swimming lessons? And it's not like I go swimming that often anyways. And if I tell Nate, he's going to think I'm silly. You know, all these things all these limits that you put on your dreams. And then I talked to him and I was like, I think this is something that I want to do. And so we're like, great, let's do it. And we still have yet to make it a priority, but we realized that was a dream. And so your dreams can be so random and so bizarre and seem to be outrageous to you, but we got to let ourselves dream. And so,
man, it's a part of being human,
right?
It's a beautiful part of being human. And when you get rid of your dreams, you kind of get rid of your desires. I love that what you said is, we ask people, what do you want? And they can't tell us. Like,
right.
If your partner is having a hard time, if you say, what do you want? Like, what is it you desire? What are your dreams? And they can't tell you. It's not because they never had dreams or desires. It's because they've been taught somewhere along the line that it just wasn't practical to dream anymore, or wasn't responsible, or it wasn't realistic. It wasn't practical. I think I just said that twice.
Well, and we did this exercise at a date night with 400 people, 400 couples, where we had them sit and talk to each other about what their dreams were. And the sky was the limit. They could say anything that they wanted.
People started crying.
And people were in tears just talking to their spouses about their dreams.
Their unlived dreams, the things that they really,
right.
like if they were really honest with themselves, if they were really transparent, this is deep down what I would really love to have happen in my life, or I'd really love to experience or see, places that they wanted to go, and businesses that they wanted to build, and hobbies they wanted to cultivate, and talents they wanted to nurture, and like conversations they wanted to have. Jessica, my dream is to raise chickens. I'm glad you have simple dreams too. Yo,
yes,
raising chickens is awesome.
That's amazing.
Waking up every morning and getting yourself some eggs.
Yeah, it can be something that seems simple to you, like raising chickens or adult swimming lessons. And it could be something crazy, like I want to go to the moon one day, or I want to completely change my career and go back to school and do something totally different.
Yeah.
And it can be scary to let yourself admit that you have those dreams, and even scarier to admit to your partner that you have those dreams.
Yeah. Another dream that you have is you want to do an African safari.
Yes.
And so guess what? We're saving money for that. Like we have a couple, a little chunk of money that gets set aside every paycheck that comes in. And it's just our African safari fund. And eventually we will have saved enough money to go on an amazing African safari. And we get to fulfill one of Angilyn's dreams of like going into the wild, right. the jungles of Africa, and like seeing amazing animals. And
the cool thing about talking about your dreams together is it really helps you think outside your box, because sometimes you hear your partner's dreams and you're like, there's no way.
That's not practical.
That's not practical.
We could never do that. We don't have money for that.
And it helps you start to think in a different way of, okay, if we could do this, what would be the pathway that we would take to get there?
What would be the first step?
Right. What's one step we can take in that direction? Whether it's something that you can do in the next little while, or whether it's something that you have to make a long-term 10-year plan for. It's exciting, and it starts to help you see things from your spouse's perspective, and they might have ideas of how to get there that you had never thought of before.
I mean, another great example is this podcast. Would you be doing this podcast without me?
No.
We've talked about this before on a previous lesson.
Yeah.
This is not like Angilyn's thing. She's just she's not one to go, hey, I'm going to go do like a Facebook Live or go live on YouTube for an hour on Sunday and see if I can get like 30 people to join live and watch us. And like, that's not her thing at all. It's totally my thing.
I married into this.
But
crazy passion.
Since we started, how has been your experience? Do you enjoy doing this?
Right. When he came to me with the idea of starting the podcast, I was very anxious about it because I didn't necessarily enjoy the sound of my own voice. He was the expert. I wasn't.
Which is crazy because your voice is amazing.
Thanks, honey. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is really important to Nate. Let's give it a try. And I found that I absolutely loved it. I found editing the podcast was one of my favorite things ever. I loved the satisfaction I'd get if there would be a sentence that just didn't quite fit, and I would edit out the sentence and bring it together to the point where no one would ever notice that a sentence was taken out, and I'll come up and have Nate listen to it and celebrate with me.
Can you hear the edit? Nope.
But
I'm so amazing.
This is a hobby I never would have pursued. or ever even, it never would have even crossed my mind.
But because Angilyn is such an amazing wife and a champion of my dreams, she's kind of cultivated her own dream within my dream, and it's awesome.
And the same thing goes back to Georgia and Mark Anderson. This whole them going over to the Middle East with wheelchairs. Again, Georgia was like, this was never on my radar. This was never something I ever wanted to do. And now going and being able to sit down with a woman holding her 7-year-old child who can't walk and help them kind of massage out their legs, because she's a massage therapist, and then seeing their face light up when they're in a wheelchair and they can move around unencumbered. And she realized just how much it became her dream too. And she never would have done it in the past otherwise. So let yourselves have these conversations. Let yourself have these dreams. And if you're noticing that you're having a conflict that's happening over and over and over again, that seems like there's no resolution in sight for it.
It might be
telling you that you have a dream that's going unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And allow you to explore that dream.
So let's talk about dreams within conflict. I linked to this PDF in the comments section. You can take a look at it. But basically, the goal of this dreams within conflict exercise is to really get to know the beliefs, the history, the story, the values that create the dream for your partner. And when you can understand like what their life has been like and what are the desires and the beliefs that are kind of like holding up this dream and making it so important to them, then it opens up a space for like real honest communication, and you can really connect on a deeper level and start to navigate through any conflict that you might be having. So it's pretty simple. Basically you split up as speaker listener, however you want to arrange it. The speaker's job is to honestly talk about your feelings and beliefs about your position, to explore and talk to your partner about like what this dream means to you and why it's important to you and what is the history behind it and what does it mean to you as a person and like what does it have to do with your identity, and to be as clear and as honest about everything that makes this dream important to you as possible.
And one thing that we were told to do is say, if I could have it all my way. And so your job isn't to say what you think your partner wants to hear or to sugarcoat things because you think it will go down a little bit easier that way. It's to be really honest and clear with yourself of, if you could have it all your way, this is what it would look like. And you're not trying to persuade your partner to your point of view, or you're not trying to say it in a way that will manipulate them into seeing it your way. You're just saying it how it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the listener's job, if you're the listener in this activity, one of the best things that you can do is take a notepad and write down like the words and phrases that really stand out to you that help you understand your partner's heart. And your goal is just to listen. You're not supposed to argue. You're not supposed to point out flaws in logic. You're not supposed to say whether or not this is a good idea or a bad idea. You're supposed to listen and ask meaningful questions. Ask them questions like,
there's a list of questions.
Yeah, there's questions on page 2, but ask them questions like, tell me more about what does this mean from like your upbringing, or why is this really valuable to you? Like tell me why that means so much to you.
Yeah, some of the questions are, tell me why this is so important to you. Does this relate to your background?
What would it mean to you to have this dream fulfilled? Like why, like what would that do for you?
Is there a fear or disaster scenario in not having this dream? So just getting really curious about their point of view, without thinking of how you're going to respond to it. You're just trying to take a step into their world and really see it through their eyes, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. You're just trying to see it through their eyes.
This is a really powerful exercise. I remember we did this exercise about me being an entrepreneur and Ange wanting to be a mom. And one of the things that I discovered is part of the reason that I wanted to not have a kid as quickly as maybe we had planned originally is it was really important to me to be able to provide for my family. It's kind of like, I felt like it's part of my duty as a husband to be a provider. And I had this underlying insecurity around having a baby and my wife feeling like she was still obligated to continue to work a full or even a part-time job to make ends meet after the baby arrives. Like I wanted her to have the option of saying, I never want to go back to work again. And it caused me a lot of insecurity and anxiety that I wasn't in a place in our life where I could offer her that. And if I'm really honest, to offer myself that. Like I wanted to feel, I felt insecure about it. And as we kind of started getting into this, like why this dream is important to me, and realizing that it's more than just like what I'm doing for her, it's also what I'm trying to do for myself. I'm trying to like prove to myself that I am a good provider, that I am a good husband, that I can be trusted and leaned on when the family really needs it.
And when I was able to really see that perspective from Nate, that it wasn't just about money and it wasn't just about dragging his feet and being scared about being a dad.
Right.
I was able to let go a little bit of my expectations because I truly saw where he was coming from and it made sense. And even though that wasn't necessarily easy for me to hear, and it did cause some grieving and letting go of my expectations, I knew where he was coming from. And it didn't create this like conflict anymore. It was just okay, like we're gonna pursue the way that he said and go with it.
So I think it's an important topic to talk about because one, pursuing dreams together is one of the most powerful and liberating and meaning creating and purpose creating things that you can do inside your marriage. Having a shared purpose, a legacy that you're going to leave behind is such an amazing thing to have as a couple. Like it's something that you get to create with your partner that nobody else in the world gets to experience. It's something that sets you apart from everybody else. You know, you look at Ty and Terry and the Hope Center, you look at Mark and Georgia and the work that they're doing with couples and helping people like nobody else in the world gets to experience this shared dream and the way that they're impacting lives like they do.
And what a way to really light the fire of your relationship.
Yeah.
Like you get into this routine and your fire is just kind of there and it might be dwindling a little bit, but just even talking about these dreams has a way of igniting the fire again. Yeah.
And a lot of couples enter this phase of their relationship after their kids move out, but there are also a lot of couples and they do that because they finally have a time and bandwidth to like have the conversation, but there's no reason that you as a young couple can start talking about your dreams and shared goals now. Mm-hmm. And like align yourself to them and start doing the work now, where even if you have like little to no resources, there's always one step that you can take to get closer to your dreams. And understanding that like there's sometimes conflict comes from some of the best places. Like your conflict isn't always because one of you is insecure or one of you is being selfish or one of you is being cruel or mean or like short-sighted. You know, sometimes that's where conflict comes from is that selfishness or that short-sightedness or having insecurities or a temper. But sometimes the deepest conflicts that we experience are simply because there's a little bit of a conflict between the dreams that we both have for our lives and the desires that we have to like live a deeply meaningful and fulfilling life, and just the difference in how we want to approach that. And I think it's worth talking about. It's worth talking about that these big conflicts can actually come from something so beautiful. And that if you're willing to lean in and have these conversations and like really sit and get to know what's going on underneath the surface of your partner's dreams and why they want to pursue them in a certain way, what happens is that you find opportunities for deeper connection. You find empathy. You find a desire. You'll find a desire to get on board with your partner's dreams a little bit more, and then amazing things happen. So don't miss out on that opportunity.
Is there anything else from the activity that we didn't go over?
There's like sample dreams here. And it says the bottom line is this: you don't want to have the kind of relationship in which you win and are influential in the relationship, but wind up crushing your partner's dream. You want the kind of relationship in which each of you support one another's dreams. If your dreams connect, so much the better.
And again, these are conversations that are going to be different for every couple. And it might not have a clear-cut path forward.
Yeah.
When you first start having these conversations. I wish we had a step-by-step scenario of this is how you get to the conclusions that you want. Yeah. But sometimes it's not easy. But one thing that our friend Celeste Davis likes to tell us is that you're not allowed to have I don't know in your vocabulary.
Yeah.
So if you start talking about your dreams and it's like, how are we going to make this happen? You're not allowed to say, I don't know. What you should say is, if we did know, what are 10 things we would do?
Yeah.
And you just start brainstorming, and you'll surprise yourself on some of the things that you can come up with to make it happen. Even if you don't necessarily pursue all 10 of those things, you're not allowed to say, I don't know, because deep down, you're creative enough to figure it out.
Yeah. And one last thing I want to share before we log off is that having these conversations is going to force you to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talked about, I think this was week 2, is that the purpose of marriage is growth. And if you want to, if you have unrealized dreams, the only way you're going to be able to realize them is by growing. And sometimes that's going to be like saving some money. Sometimes it's going to be reprioritizing your time. Sometimes it's going to be making sacrifices so your partner can pursue their dream, just like they'll make sacrifices when you pursue yours later down the road. And then a lot of the sacrifices that come into mix that contribute to your growth is like confronting the things that you're scared of. Like,
it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Like one of the things that I had to do in order to pursue this dream that we're doing right now is I had to confront my insecurities of being a provider, and like, maybe I'll fail, and and like, there was a lot of tension and self-doubt and I don't know, like,
I remember the moment
critic.
when you said that you were ready. We were driving in the car, and we had just been to a was it Jordan Peterson? A Jordan Peterson.
Was it that Jordan Peterson lecture
about confronting your dragons?
Yeah.
And we didn't have any clear cut like scenario of, okay, this is how we're going to make it work so Nate can be a provider. He just had this realization one day of he needed to confront his dragons, and the dragon was his fear of not being able to. The way to get stronger is not to run away from the dragon. You have to face it. And he was just like, I think I'm ready. And it was as simple as that. And sometimes that's how it happens. It just requires that wrestle. But yeah, just be willing to lean into your insecurities, whether your insecurity is like being in debt and facing like some insecurity about money. Maybe the insecurity is like, I'm moving too slow and I need to move faster, and you need to take a deep breath and say, hey, in order for me to like help my partner have their dream, maybe I need to slow my dream down a little bit. And that's okay, because I can still be making strides towards that dream without like walking away from it. Or bulldozing my partner's dream. Right. Maybe it's a timing thing. Maybe you need to adjust on the timing or the timeline. Maybe you need to expectations sometimes. And there's going to be compromises that you need to make and things that you need to confront in yourself and be okay with. But as you can lean into having these hard conversations and confronting these things in yourself and what it means about you to maybe not be pregnant until you're 30, or, maybe it's, you're not going to be a provider for a year and a half longer than you thought you would be. Or maybe it takes a little bit longer to get out of debt than you wanted to. Yeah. There's all these things that might be going on in your head that if you're willing to confront them, they open up opportunities for connection and growth, and for you to have a deeply meaningful relationship with purpose that is rooted far deeper than many of the other shallow relationships out there. Mm-hmm. So continue to pursue your dreams, have a conversation. That's I think my invitation to you today is sit down with your partner, the person that you love most in the world today, and like have a 30 to 60-minute conversation about your dreams. And if you're not in a relationship, with a really close friend. Yeah. Yep. Or just journal for a little while about your own dreams. What are the things that you want? What do you want? If you could go back in time and erase those moments that said that dreaming and having aspirations and goals and like wanting something, if you could have whatever you wanted, what would it be? If you could go back to that place that said it was impractical to dream anymore, and you could just keep dreaming, what would it look like? Take away all the barriers. Take away time barriers. Take away money barriers. Take away all those things telling you that this wouldn't work, and see. Yep. What would you say? What would be your dream? I have a friend. She made a goal to give $1 million to charity in her lifetime, and she tracks it. And she's like, you know what? I can't give $1 million check right now, but I can give $20 here and $100 there as I save and budget my time and my money. And if I keep track of it over the years, like, she's starting to realize I've given $20,000, I've given $50,000, I've given $100,000. And it's like, oh, $1 million is doable if I start with $1 and then just
keep grinding away at that thing. So like find the thing and take the first step. Have the conversation, figure out what it is, and take the first step. That is our invitation to you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for going with us these past 8 or 9 weeks through the 7 principles.
It's been a lot of fun.
And
our variation.
If you didn't tune in the beginning, we're not going to be here next week. We're going to be out of town. So we'll reconvene June 14th. That's in 2 weeks. And we're going to start diving into the New Rules of Marriage by Terrence Real.
And we've also been having conversations about other lessons that we want to talk about and some of the things that are on the table over the next couple of weeks. And we'd love to hear from you and what you would like to hear us talk about. But we would love to talk about shame. We'd love to talk about pornography. I think what else we want to learn to talk about?
We were going to have one on sex and intimacy. Sex and intimacy
would be a really great conversation to have. Like we could have a conversation about cultivating desire. Like there's a lot of really cool topics that we can talk about. Everything. We should just do a whole episode on everything I wish we would have known before we went on our honeymoon.
Maybe we can have Alicia come back with us.
Or we can just talk about what we learned and what we wish other couples knew.
Uh-huh.
We're totally capable of doing that. You can PM us absolutely or shoot us an email, Sam.
Yep. That's great.
Any way you want to get a hold of us is cool.
That was the question. Do we just PM you guys for topics? Sure.
Yep.
That works.
Through the Facebook page, through our personal accounts, or just through email. You can email me at Nate at Mormonmarriages.com. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
We'll hang around for a couple of minutes in case other questions trickle in. And otherwise, that's our lesson for today, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Let's go and see if we missed any comments. Samuel, thank you. He says, what a risk, talking about when I told you to quit your job.
Right? She's a champ.
And then he says, I hope you guys are doing okay. You look sad.
We're doing great.
We're doing good. I am very tired. Around this time in the afternoon, I hit a wall. I think it's the pregnancy.
And I have an eye infection right now. So
he's wearing glasses.
I'm wearing glasses to try and hide it a little bit.
But we're happy. We're
actually doing really well.
Thanks for asking, though.
Yeah. Jenna, thanks for tuning in. Jessica, you're like here every week. We love you.
Yeah, so's Jenna.
So good to see you guys. All of the above. Yeah, you want to hear all those topics?
Perfect.
Yeah. If you have a preference of where you want us to start, we would love to tackle that. And if you just have topics from your own life that you're like, how did you guys manage this? Like maybe you want to talk about like dating, and we're happy to talk about dating and what we learned dating and eventually finding each other. Because remember, like I have a weird, an unusual story where I left the church in my mid-20s and then came back in my 30s and got engaged to another woman and then broke off that engagement and then ended up meeting Angilyn at 32 years old. And
he was in the dating world
I dated for a really long time. And like Ange went on a mission later than the typical sister missionary and came home and was very introverted and somehow married this like weird guy. And she also has called off an engagement. Like we've been through a lot of, we're not like the typical, we met at BYU as freshmen and got married and the rest is history couple.
Which is great. That's awesome.
Which is great if that's for you. But I just know that there's a lot of YSAs listening and they might feel a little bit frustrated.
Feel like they don't fit in that.
Or they might be going through faith issues. And I just want you guys to know that like we're an open book and we're happy to talk about whatever. So if there's something that you're struggling with and you want to ask us a question, we will address it anonymously on a show like this. And we're happy to talk about our journeys and how we've kind of navigated some of these difficulties and trials.
We definitely don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
But we will speak to our own experiences.
We'll do our best.
I don't see any questions. So
no.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Morgan for tuning in on YouTube. And Jenna and Jessica.
Morgan, every week. Once again, we love having you around, man. Okay, guys, we're going to go enjoy the rest of our Sunday. Probably put this girl down for a little nap.
See you
so
in
she can
2
grow
weeks.
A baby. Yeah, just a reminder, we're not going to be here next week because we're going to be with family camping, but the week after that, we will be back. So you've got 2 weeks to submit your favorite questions for us. Melissa says, when I first started listening to these podcasts, I had several conversations with close friends, how I wish that these podcasts were available 20 years ago. I know I would have benefited from them as a younger person. And even now I appreciate them.
Thanks,
Melissa.
That's really sweet.
And Suzette says, thank you for doing this every week and for your podcast. I've learned so much from about how to approach dating and improve other relationships in my life. You are very welcome. And thank you for telling people about it. If you guys know people that you think might enjoy these little lessons or our podcast episodes, like just tag them in the comments, send it to them in an email or a text. And also like helps us if you either like the Facebook page or subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get kind of notifications when we do more lessons like this. And we've got some other really cool interviews that we're going to start doing live. And if you want to see the live interviews, that's a good way to kind of.
We already started with Jennifer Finlayson Fife.
Yeah, we did. We did an Ask a Mormon Sex Therapist interview this last week with Jennifer, and we did it live on Facebook and YouTube. And it was really cool to have people engaging live in those interviews. And I think we might do some future podcasts that way. So definitely like tune in that way. It's
all right.
Good way to stay connected.
Bethany says, thank you.
Love you back, Bethany.
All right.
Appreciate you.
We're going to head out. Take
Bye,
care,
guys.
everyone. Have a good 2 weeks.